When Japanese manga style meets European Gothic literature, it can become something as legendary as Berserk, Hellsing Ultimate, or something like Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, an early 2000s anime movie that feels like a fairy tale dream turned into a nightmare. Written by Hideyuki Kikuchi and illustrated by Yoshitaka Amano, Vampire Hunter D is a graphic novel that received its first film adaptation in 1985 and later in 2000. Set in a dystopian future, the film follows a vampire hunter named D who sets out on his mission to rescue a woman from the nobles, bloodthirsty vampires who rule over humanity. D himself is a vampire-human crossbreed who brutally slays vampires and protects innocent humans from them. Today, we're going to talk about 10 iconic and disturbing visuals from this film that feature D's horrific encounters, too much bloodshed, as well as some emotionally heavy sequences that are as disturbing as the visuals. So, if you haven't watched this film yet, dig any further because there is going to be a lot of spoilers as we move ahead. That said, without further ado, let's get started. Charlotte's kidnapping. So let's start with a dark and foreboding opening sequence that already sets the grim tone of the story, perfectly juxtaposing beauty and horror, two contradicting yet recurring themes in this film. A horse-drawn carriage runs through the graveyards and empty dark streets of the city in the middle of the night, while inside the lavish mansion of the Elbournes, Charlotte waits for her beloved vampire, Meyer Link, a greater noble from the long line of the House of Meyerling. A young, beautiful, and amber-eyed Charlotte is anxious as she waits for her lover to come and take her with him without anyone's notice. The carriage stops by the mansion, startling Charlotte, who recognizes Meyer's presence when the windows of her room suddenly swing open in a stormy wind. A crack appears on the mirror as we see an invisible entity pick up Charlotte in its arms. With such a hook, from the opening scene, it keeps us guessing about the antagonist and thinking that Charlotte might just be a damsel in distress. While the haunting abduction in this scene becomes the driving force of the story, it doesn't reveal anything about Meyer's intentions or Charlotte's relationship with the vampire. The Marcus Brothers' entrance. The most notorious group of vampire hunters is the Marcus clan, a band of brothers led by the eldest, Borgoff Marcus. After Charlotte's abduction, her father, John Elbourne, hires them to find his daughter before she gets bitten by the vampire. According to the novel, the Marcus clan had the highest success in vampire hunting, making them a strong competitor for D, who was on the same mission. Borgoff's younger brothers are Kyle, Grovek, and Nolt, along with the youngest member of the clan, who technically wasn't a biological member of the family. According to the novel, their parents conducted genetic experiments giving each of their offspring some specific superpowers. As we also saw in the film, they use supernatural powers to fight the nobles. In one scene, the Marcus clan drives through a desolate village when a crowd of bloodthirsty nobles attacks the hunters on their way. Borgoff kills some of them with arrows, while Nolt and Kyle manage to beat some to death with their sharp metallic weapons. A predatory, grotesque, open-mouthed noble comes to attack Layla, who pulls out her silver gun to finish it off. After the bloodshed, the Marcus clan stands amidst the dead bodies scattered on the ground, while Borgoff hears a horse's gallop in the distance. Thinking it must be another noble, Borgoff shoots his arrow, but vampire hunter D captures it with his hands, breaking it and briefly impressing the Marcus brothers. D, despite being the most feared hunter, leaves them alone, as he's obliged to hunt vampires, not harm humans. Nolt's Shadow Death. Tracking down the noble's carriage, the Marcus clan finds the most notorious town of mutants and magical creatures, the Barbaroi. There, Borgoff finds a black horse-drawn carriage just like the one that had Charlotte in it. Grabbing the opportunity, Borgoff, Kyle, and Nolt come out of their vehicle to attack the nobles, but at that moment, the black carriage turns back to a dark velvety shadow that quickly surrounds them. A sneering laugh and a malicious tone terrifies the brothers, who can hear the sound but can't see anyone. This evil hints at the most manipulative mutant of the Barbaroi, Benj, who uses his shadow magic to kill his victims. Similarly, here, Benj attacks Nolt's shadow, making him bleed out of his nose and mouth, eventually dropping dead to the ground. It takes some time for Borgoff and Kyle to process their brother's death, but they soon understand the evil powers of the Barbaroi, so they get inside their vehicles to plan their next move. Benj is one of the 3 primary Barbaroi from the community. They are extremely loyal to the nobles, as we see the leader of the Barbaroi refuse to help anyone against the vampires. Benj, amongst them, is the most cunning and elusive figure that even Grovek's spirit superpowers can't defeat. Yet, when the Marcus brothers come to take their revenge, Benj tries to run away. However, he's brutally slain by Kyle and Borgoff. The imagery of his eyes plucked out of his sockets in the face of death is one of the most disturbing deaths portrayed in the film. Carmilla's resurrection. When Meyer and Charlotte arrived at the castle of Chaith, were introduced to the castle's owner, Countess Carmilla Elizabeth Bathory, also known as the Bloody Countess. Carmilla welcomes the couple, showing them a spaceship for their journey to the stars. Carmilla, seemingly a helpful noblewoman for Meyer, is something else in disguise. She's the most cunning ruler of the nobility who can create distracting illusions to mess with human minds. When Meyer refuses to bite Charlotte and ventures out to fight Dee, Carmilla, taking the shape of Meyer, bites her instead, leaving her on the floor bleeding out from the wound. The flood of blood sweeps through the floors of the castle and touches a coffin. The bloody countess lies. The corpse of the countess wakes up from the coffin, coming to bite Charlotte, but Meyer arrives just in time to protect his beloved from her cruel fate. Dee's mysterious left hand. Dee's left hand has a speaking head embedded on his palm, which sometimes speaks disturbing things that let us imagine the mysterious origins of the Dampier. This homunculus carved in Dee's hand can absorb any kind of energy and heal the wound, as well as become a source of knowledge for Dee. Almost 10,000 years old, this homunculus was first seen amongst the sacred ancestors before finally being passed on to Dee. Sometimes it can read his mind and speaks about his thoughts and desires that Dee doesn't want to accept. Thus, he sometimes presses his hand hard to stop its non-stop blabbering. In one scene, after Dee bandages Layla after her injuries, Dee's hand cunningly speaks about his desire to taste the young blood, which Dee completely ignores. After all, Dee is also a vampire hybrid who has all the traits of a vampire, like his inability to remain in the sun for a long time and the usual bloodlust. But Dee is more inclined to his human nature as he controls his bloodlust, almost making it non-existent for him, and therefore he trains himself to become the most feared and brave vampire hunter of all time. Carolyn's shape-shifting ambush. The noble's carriage doesn't usually stop to rest during the day, as the vampires aren't immune to sunlight. However, Meyer lets his beloved bask in the sun for one last time before they get inside the castle of Chaith. When Charlotte takes a lap nearby, feeling the warmth of sunlight, Dee approaches her. He wants to take her back to her father, while Charlotte reveals that she's in love with Meyer Ling. Meanwhile, an impulsive Layla, out of her lust for the bounty, captures Charlotte, but soon she gets entangled in Carolyn's unfurling hair strands. Carolyn is one of the three Barbaroi and the shape-shifting creature who has previously attacked the Marcus brothers' vehicle by merging herself into it. Now, she captures Layla by transforming into a giant tree with sprouting branches. Carolyn is slain by Dee multiple times, but she still manages to regain her form. Her severed head hanging in the labyrinthine branches of a tree is the most unsettling part of the entire sequence. However, she once again launches an attack on Layla, who uses her knife to direct a lightning bolt that strikes Carolyn, eventually burning her down. Meyer and Charlotte's tragic love story. Despite the haunting opening scene that establishes Meyer Link as the most terrifying vampire, he's not purely evil. Charlotte is deeply in love with Meyer, who shares the same feelings for her, but due to the age-old animosity between the nobles and the humans, nobody lets them be together. Therefore, they secretly venture out, hiding themselves in a carriage to reach their ultimate destination, the stars. Although John Elbourne fears that the noble might have bitten his daughter, turning her into a vampire, Meyer doesn't let his bloodlust overpower him to protect his love. Instead, he wants her to remain human because the gift of immortality is more of a curse than a blessing. Meyer and Charlotte's emotional journey to protect each other surpasses even the most haunting visuals of the film and brings out the real horror of losing a loved one. Probably, at this point, we all wanted Charlotte to leave the castle with her man to live happily ever after. The film refuses to give us that closure. Instead, when Dee's sword bisected Meyer, our hearts ached for the helpless Charlotte, who left her home just to be with the love of her life. Despite being the good guy in the story, Dee or the other hunters don't let Charlotte choose what she wants to be, which disturbingly points out how humans are bound to abide by the norms rather than respecting someone's autonomy. The castle's haunting finale. During the film's climax, we see Meyer come back to life to protect Charlotte from the evil Countess. The entire sequence is filled with a lot of bloodshed and loss of loved ones as Charlotte takes her last breath in Meyer's arms. Layla, who points her silver gun at the duo, fails to pull the trigger as she gets overpowered by the emotional weight of seeing two unfortunate lovers being with each other for the last time. However, Dee interrupts as he's still not done with his job. He keeps Meyer busy by fighting him while Layla takes off the ring from Charlotte's finger and tosses it out for Dee to catch. Upon receiving the ring, Dee puts an end to the fight, injuring Meyer, who's confused as to why Dee intentionally missed the chance to kill him. Dee explains that his job is done as Charlotte is no more, and he has no intention of meddling in Meyer's business anymore. Meanwhile, the castle begins to crumble due to all the destruction and the fights taking place within. So, Dee, taking Layla with him, gets out of the castle, while Meyer Link, taking Charlotte's dead body in his arms, boards the spaceship and sets out on their journey to eternity. Layla prays for them to fly and never come back to this world, where there's no place for love and humanity. Death of the key characters. We already covered some of the most haunting deaths in the film, such as Nolt's shadow death, Benja's death in Kyle's hands, and Caroline being burned down by the thunderstrike. Madhouse artwork and Yoshiaki Kawajiri's storytelling style need to be praised for making each of these death scenes so disturbingly gorgeous. However, one of the major haunting visuals of the story is the scene in which Mashira kills Kyle Marcus while he holds Charlotte hostage on the bridge. Initially, Mashira jumps into the water because of the sunlight, but when Meyer Link himself gets out of the carriage to retrieve Charlotte, the sun burns his skin before it begins to set. However, just as the sunlight dims, Mashira gets out of the water and slays Kyle. Later, Mashira, who could turn his stomach into a grotesque beast jaw, gets brutally killed by Dee. On the other hand, Grovek, Layla, and Borgoff remain the survivors of their clan, but upon reaching the castle, Borgoff is tricked by Carmilla's illusion trap. He can see his dead brothers hiding inside crates. Falling into the trap, Borgoff steps ahead to approach them, only to be attacked by Carmilla, who bites him, turning him into a vampire noble. Later, Borgoff tries to attack both Layla and Dee, but he's killed in the process. Grovek manages to awaken his spirit power to kill Meyer, but he's also destroyed, leaving Layla as the only survivor of the clan. Lastly, Charlotte's death and Meyer shedding his tears over her corpse becomes the most hauntingly tragic sequence of the film. The creators have uniquely presented these horrific details without revealing too much. They focused more on the emotional aftermath of death than just visualizing it directly. In simple terms, it gets more disturbing when a character's death is felt by the audience because it's the best way a horror film leaves a lasting effect in our minds. The disturbing deal between Elbourne and Dee. The supposed rescue mission has brought Dee to the Elbournes. He enters a castle surrounded by guards aiming at him with their rifles. One call and they'd shoot the Dampier. However, nobody dares do that, as the Dampier, or Dee, is the most powerful vampire hunter with an unbeatable success rate at killing vampires. Charlotte's brother gives him an advance, asking him to rescue his sister who has been taken by a noble, but as John Elbourne intervenes, his painful, yet most disturbing intentions are revealed. He wants to get his daughter back, of course, alive and as a human being. He insists that if Charlotte turns into a vampire, Dee must put an end to her misery. John knew that Charlotte was in love with Meyer, and like any normal father, he would assume the worst. Therefore, he agrees to pay a hefty sum of money to Dee, keeps his promise to kill her. Marvelous verdict! We aren't quite sure if we'll ever be able to see the upcoming film of this franchise, Vampire Hunter D Resurrection, which similarly follows Kikuchi's novel. A CG animated series, Resurrection, was initially planned in 2015, and by mid-2016, pre-production had started. However, due to the 2020 pandemic, the production was delayed, and ever since, we have heard nothing of if it's being continued or if it just wasn't meant to be. By the way, we recently celebrated the 40th anniversary of Vampire D, the 1985 film that was released in some theaters in America, so who knows, that might be a sign. On that note, unfortunately, our video has come to an end. If you enjoyed it, please like and let us know your favorite scene from Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more such amazing anime content. Until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.